Good afternoon, everyone. I was just getting ready to say, like we were at a board meeting, we will start the meeting shortly. We're going to do the 30-second countdown. So I had to remember that we are not at a board meeting. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. Education is a very important topic, anything having to do with our children. What better backdrop we have than a playground over here with children playing? I'd much rather have the cameras directed on our children playing than at me, but that's not the way it is today. So I'd like to start out with a general statement, some remarks. I will be taking some questions at the end, but I do have to remind everybody, and I know that all of our media folks are quite cognizant that I must remain under open meeting law parameters because of our agenda items for tomorrow. So I'm Linda Cavazos. I'm president of the Clark County School Board. I represent District G, Parkdale Community Center, and with Laura Deering School very close next to us, this is my district. I want to thank Parkdale Community Center, Alex Bernal, and the whole community for allowing me to have this event here today. On January 6th, 2020, as the Clark County School Board of Trustees was concluding their new officer elections, all of us saw alarming images of people crashing through the gates, windows, and doors of our nation's capital. That day is now frequently referred to as the January 6th insurrectionist storming by domestic terrorists. As I was elected unanimously that morning by my peers, I never thought that as a school board president that my peers and I would be subjected on a lesser scale to death threats, personal attacks on our families, and attempts to disrupt and shut down our business meetings while still dealing with a terrifying pandemic. Board presidents across the nation have had to deal with these attempted disruptors while trying so hard to hear the pleas and concerns of our parents, educators, and the community about masks, vaccines, transportation, academic achievement, overcrowded classes, lack of services for our special needs and ELL students, substitute and driver shortages, educator shortages, and resignations, toxic school climate and culture, the mental health of both our students and educators, and racism in our schools. We have dealt with these challenges, and I'm proud to say that we have never had a meeting shut down or failed to complete our agendas. We persevered, but much remains to be done regarding the many issues that I just cited. Our educators, parents, and community deserve much credit for everything that they did to get us through that really difficult time. So today, why am I here? I wish to state to you that we face the crisis of a divided Board of Trustees, one that has struggled to come to consensus on many important issues that directly or indirectly affect our students, educators, and community. As a result of that division, caused by many factors, I have no choice today but to sadly but adamantly refute and deny as truth many of the statements that have been made in a letter released publicly by Trustee Lola Brooks in support of an agenda item requesting that I be removed as board president. The fact that this item was added very soon after another agenda item concerning the superintendent's employment was quite frankly disheartening. Such a blatant display of retaliation occurring during a time when many students and our own educators are stating and reporting that intimidation and retaliation openly exists in our district was very distressing. This is something that can no longer be ignored, and it must be addressed. I, for one, will not look the other way. Other statements made by two other trustees who requested this item may be addressed at tomorrow's board meeting. Additional reference materials are being added this afternoon if they have not already been added to board docs. In closing, as the board president, I have made mistakes. I have not always gone in the absolutely best direction, but I have tried my best to place the interest of our students, our educators, and our community first, because they are my constituents, and they elected me to represent them, not the one single employee that the trustees supervise. It is my wish that we can all go forward, find a path forward with civility, respect, and trust. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my scribbles here. We have to do that. We have to find a path forward in collaboration because our kids are depending on us. I thank you again for being here today, and I will take a few questions that are within the parameters of open meeting law. Thank you. Tiffany?
Thank you. President Cavazos, in that letter from Lola Brooks, it talks about receiving reports from numerous principals that you have reached out to them directly in an effort to oust Superintendent Jar by publicly humiliating him through a vote of no confidence. Is this true?
No, it is not true. Dave?
You speak of the need for collaboration. What would that look like within the context of a school board meeting and school board deliberation?
Dave, I believe that that has to look at that we all consider that we have 7 different people and personalities on this board. We have to look more at our commonalities and not our differences, and that we have to always put the needs of our children first, and that we're going to have to find a new way. I believe that communication is the foundation of any kind of effective governance. And if we cannot find that new way of communicating, it's going to be very difficult. So that's one way that I see that it's going to look like. Go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. So what do you think that would look like? What would you get? What would collaboration look like? And how would you know when you found commonalities? What does that mean?
I think that we would have to look, I would want it to look like us coming together to be able to discuss differences, because I think right now we're at an impasse, so to speak, where we just come to like a brick wall. So instead of seeing like maybe a transparent wall where you can look at the other side and you can consider their opinions, I think that right now we're at a point, if you've watched any of our board meetings, and again, I just want to tell you, if you have Netflix or Amazon Prime, you should maybe consider that on Thursday nights instead of the board meetings, because you have to have a very strong constitution to make it through that. And I say that lightly, but what I'm saying here is that if you've watched any of the board meetings, you see that sometimes that impasse that we come to, I feel that we are not coming collaboratively together to look at the other person's perspective and then to find the best, I want to say, compromise. Yes. Hi, Victoria. Finally meet. Nice to meet you.
I spoke with some of the trustees who have called to discuss your title. They allege some bulliness on your part and that you were creating a toxic work environment, micromanaging on some issues that they don't think that you are supposed to be doing. What's your response to that?
Victoria, do you want to break that into more than one part? Is there a part that has to do with bullying, and then is it connected up with micromanaging?
They say that you are coming on them for their social media use, whereas your priorities are not towards the students and the staff, and then your priorities are with what they are doing on social media.
Okay.
Trying to control that.
All right, I understand now. Thank you. I think I want to respond to that by first addressing the bullying part. I am a person that when we get a public records request or we get something that's a inquiry about social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever, I am never somebody that ever has to go back and search through those emails or those social media posts. I have very seldom ever had to delete anything from a social media post. So I will adamantly and invite you all to look at my social media that there has been no bullying. Now, I'd like to address, Victoria, if you wish, the other part of your question. As far as, was it micromanaging of social media or?
Yes, micromanaging social media, talking about the issues that they're bringing up on social media, whereas you say that maybe your priorities aren't towards the CCSD staff and students, but you're more focused on what they post about social media on some hot topics, political topics.
Ah, okay, now I understand, and thank you for clarifying that. I will say that when I see a social media post that directly refutes what the superintendent and the Board of Trustees have decided on, I will ask that person a question about it. I have not, and again, I invite you to look at my social media. I am not somebody that gets into back and forth, and I don't see it as being constructive. I'm a former high school teacher. I think most of you know that I'm a therapist. I used to be a family court mediator, and so that's non-constructive to me. So again, I invite you to look at that, and I do deny and refute that. I will put social media posts on there that I will answer people's questions, but you will not see me in a back and forth arguing. I don't think that's respectful. I don't think that's a good role model for our children. And while we're speaking about role models, some of the behavior that's been exhibited at board meetings, I will tell you right now, our kids are watching, and we're supposed to be the adults in the room. So no, I would have to say I completely refute that. Thank you for the question. Yes.
James with Los Angeles You're the president of the board. With these factors leading up to the decision for tomorrow, do you take any responsibility for this, for making this happen?
Are you referring to just this one item on 3.02?
I'm referring to the letter and the aspects prior to today.
Okay, and thank you for that question. The reason I asked you to elaborate is because I've been getting a lot of questions where it's been rolled into two different topics. Yes, I do take responsibility. There were some times where I feel that I could have handled situations a little bit better. We all make mistakes, but that's not an excuse, so I would own my accountability. And accountability and accessibility are two very important things to me in this district. Thank you for the question. Tiffany, I'm going to go to this gentleman here first.
Jeremy with Channel 13 now.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing well. Within Lola Brooks's letter, it mentions that the last straw to actually send that and make this action towards moving you as board president was the fact that you and two of the trustees said move forward with discussing ending Superintendent Jar's contract. Can you kind of clarify, the reasoning behind all of this? Because it seems pretty implied in Lola Brooks's letter that for whatever reason you have something out against Superintendent Jar.
Jeremy, I'm going to ask you if you could shorten that, which is the bottom line question.
Bottom line question, how would you respond to accusations you have it out for Superintendent Jar, especially the fact that you brought this item forward to talk about termination?
All right, so publicly, Trustee Ford has already released that she was the initial requester. And so there's a little bit of confusion over majority votes, in our district and our meetings. It has to be 4 out of 7. So for a special meeting or a special agenda item that to be placed on the agenda or a completely separate meeting, we have a redistricting special meeting coming up, you only need 3 trustees. So Trustee Ford was the initial requester, Trustee Guzman was the second who concurred, and I was the third. In response to your bottom line question, which I thank you for, no, I do not have it out for anyone. I do not want to speak to anything having to do with performance, but I will say that no, I do not have it out for anyone. I want to further add, though, that as I put in my remarks, when I see certain things happening, we tell our kids, if you see something, say something. We have to follow that ourselves, and we have to be able to stand up and be able to address the issues that we see. Thank you for the question. I'm so sorry, Jackie. When did you see again? I didn't see you, sorry. Go ahead.
I have a two-part question.
Okay.
I was trying to put you guys on that one. You mentioned those concerns at the very beginning of this. Was there any one event that precipitated Trustee Ford filing that agenda item request, and you yourself and another trustee concurring with it? And secondly, do you have a fourth voting piece to move forward with it?
Boy, Jackie, I can always depend on you to just get me there. The first part that you're asking about, I have to speak carefully on this. I know that you are extremely familiar with open meeting law. Yes, in answer to your question, which I believe was there an event that precipitated this? I don't want to overstep boundaries in speaking for Trustee Ford, but yes, there was a set, if you don't mind, I'm going to call it a set of circumstances, maybe a domino effect. And so that is the answer to your first question. Confidentiality measures prevent me from going into any specifics. You know, that really, really depends on how the discussion goes. I did put in one of my tweets, and I know that somebody here asked me about it, I had stated that the item 3.02 that is on the agenda for my removal as president, that it could possibly, depending on how the discussion goes, it could precipitate that other issues, excuse me, losing my voice, other issues could possibly lead to discussion involving other trustees' actions. That's the most careful way I can put it. Your last question, Jackie, I believe was, do you want to go ahead and say it again?
Do you think you have a fourth vote on the agenda item?
I have my opinions, but because it is an action item for tomorrow, I am not allowed to comment on that. I know you understand. Thank you. There's somebody over here. I think it was Tiffany and then Dave.
I have two questions actually. So the first one is, we have, as we mentioned, so much going on with the district. We have bus driver shortage. We have teachers with issues with their health trust. We have students who are late to class because of bus issues. And here we are again, another meeting where we're talking about issues about the board going at it, the superintendent's contract. How can we even ensure for people in the community, staff members, community members, parents, that their issues are even being addressed while everyone's trying to focus on all the issues with the superintendent and the trustees?
Thank you, Tiffany, for the question. First of all, we have to do better. We have to do better. We can't be letting these distracting issues take away from exactly what you were talking about here, and which I already mentioned in my general remarks. I think the public has been getting more involved. They've been writing in. They have, I don't want to say attacked us, but they've been very assertive on social media and in basically our district emails. We need to find a way that what is not happening in our district right now, that should be happening, has to go forward. And so that involves a lot of these issues. One thing that I'd like to highlight, if you don't mind, for your question, is what I mentioned as far as toxic school climate and culture. So I have a lot of times people will say, well, Trustee Cavazos, why are you talking about this? Why do you talk so much about safety and mental health? And what about our achievement gap? What about, what's happening in our schools, as far as kids not being able to know how to read or their math scores are low? I look at the whole child. Again, as a former teacher and as a therapist, I get accused of, all that warm and fuzzy stuff. Guess what? If we don't look at that warm and fuzzy stuff, if we don't look at our children as whole, they are not just a data point on a computer screen. They are whole children that have issues. So I think our community has to demand more, and I believe the Board of Trustees, and I'm going to refer to Dave's question too, is what that's going to look like. If we're not able to find a way to come together on this, our decisions affect everyone. And we get a lot of questions about what's operational, what's oversight. And, it's one of those things where the excuses, I think I put that on one of my tweets. It was like hashtag color me tired of excuses. I can't make excuses anymore. The whole board can't make excuses anymore. We have to do better for our children. I think you had a second part.
Yeah, the second part, Trustee Burks in the letter gave you 3 options to remedy the situation. Why did you choose to go with the third option as having it in the public forum?
First of all, I don't think that Trustee Brooks or any other trustee, or myself included, can just issue an ultimatum such as, I'm going to give you 3 choices. I think that right away, just even that vernacular, even the way that it's stated, is not very collaborative. And so being somebody that believes in transparency and that we need to actually get those facts out there, my immediate response was, we've already talked about some of these things. We've already discussed this. People have watched us for hours where it goes, the conversation goes in a circular fashion, then it goes back, and then it does a U-turn. I think they're tired of that, Tiffany. I think that with me, I looked at it and I just said, you know what? This is the time and this is the place, and some of this needs to come out in public. I don't want anybody to accuse me of you're trying to broker a deal in a back room, because that already happens way too much. So that's my answer to that. Did you have a follow-up?
I'm sorry, I did have one. There were rumors going around that you were actually trying to have Dr. Jar's contract actually put in the consent agenda rather than a special item at the beginning of the meeting. Can you just address if that's accurate or not, or if that's even possible, if that process is possible?
Okay, let me get that straight. That I was trying to place it in the consent agenda?
Yeah, there are just rumors in the community going around. Can you address that, and is that even possible as the president of the school board of trustees to even do that?
Normally, the consent agenda is put together, scheduled, and compiled by the superintendent and his staff. If you know yourself that there's all these different parts to the consent agenda. You know, there's purchasing, there's things having to do with transportation, there's all different categories there. This is the first I'm hearing of this rumor, and believe me, I've heard a lot in the last week, but I've not heard that one, and my answer is no, there was never any effort on my part. Dave, I'm sorry?
No, thank you. What do you ultimately hope to achieve with this news conference, and are you concerned about blowback?
You know, I'm going to address the second part, Dave, if you don't mind. I'm not too concerned about blowback, because what else can they do? What else can they do? When you've had death threats, when you've had to put in an extra security system, when you already have a security system, when you have people spreading untrue statements about you, the blowback would be the least of my problems. You've known me for a while, you know that I'm pretty thick-skinned. My kids like to say that, you know, I've survived, 5 children, so, if really, I mean, the ganas, the gold, the gray hairs, they're there, okay? But that would be the least of my concerns, because I think that you have to stand up for when you see wrongs being done, and you're either going to stand up for your morals and your ethics, but if you're going to be someone that the last person you talk to or a special interest over here affects you, then you're going to lose your way. So that's the second part. First part, can you repeat it, Dave?
What do you hope to achieve from this news conference?
One of the things I hope to achieve, and I'll just say this out, just openly, is that I'm hoping that we can tamp down some of the concerns before tomorrow's meeting. It may get the opposite effect, and maybe where it riles people up more. If that's what it does, so be it. I would have to say my main goal tonight is transparency and getting this out in the open, because there are so many folks, and I hear from them constantly, like, how come we didn't know about this, and how come you guys are talking about this, and what did you decide in a back room or a closed session? And we're not allowed, by law, we cannot discuss or divulge anything that's in a closed session. So what I'm hoping to accomplish is that somewhere our colleagues can come together and we can figure out that path forward. Because as I said at the end of my remarks, our kids are depending on us. I mean, what is the main concern if you are on the Board of Trustees? As a former teacher, I have to tell you, it's our children, their physical, academic, mental, and emotional welfare. If our children are not okay, then you know what? We need to be out of a job. We're not doing our job if they're not okay. Thank you, Dave, for the question. Yes?
Let's take a step back and look at the big picture here.
Sure.
Obviously, your future as president is going to be discussed tomorrow. Superintendent Jar's job will be discussed tomorrow. Parents sitting at home, seeing as the 2 top officials in the school district, their jobs, it seems like the 2 of you are at odds. What would you say to parents about questioning why is this fighting at the top of the school district, and how is that affecting my children and the school district? What would you say to parents?
Good question. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm Kim from Foxfire.
Thank you. I remember talking with you. We kind of had a little back and forth texting thing going there. First of all, I do want to clarify that my job is not at stake. It's just the title, the position. And just to let you know that unlike Trustee Brooks and Trustee Wright that came right before me, I have never intended, I made it quite clear that I was not going to try to get a second consecutive term as president. So it's not my job, it's just, you know what I really have left? Let's see, this is what, the end of October? I have 2 months left, like 60 days. The very first work session in January is when we elect a new slate of officers. So anyway, I wanted to clarify that because people were asking me, are you going to be removed from the board? I said, they're still stuck with me for at least another year. The other question I think is more important, Kim, and that's the one that you asked about parents, almost the same as what I answered Tiffany, and that's that this is, again, a very, very deep lack of communication because we only have one employee. All of the other employees, the teachers, the support professionals, they are all under the oversight of the superintendent. The superintendent is our only employee. So again, I would have to go back to my mantra of finding a path forward, and there has to be a way that the Board of Trustees and the superintendent can collaboratively work together as a team. That's what I would want to tell parents. And I'm just going to throw in, we have to do better. Yes?
If tomorrow happens to be your last day as president, what do you hope people point to as your tenure as president of the board?
I didn't hear the very last part. I can't hear you very well.
What would you like people to point to as your tenure as president of the board if tomorrow happens to be your last day?
Well, first of all, I should have taken that picture of my office with the plaque that said president. You know, I should have done that to begin with. I think I might have one around somewhere. It sounds like you're asking me, like, what would I see as my legacy for this year, this 10 months or whatever? In this position, not like the other 3 years. First of all, I am proud to say that I am one of a limited number of districts across the whole United States that was able to get a safe storage, I guess you would call it, I think our formal name was Safe Storage Firearm Resolution. That went out to over 300,000 homes. I'm sure you guys are cognizant that we did have a lot of publicity about suicides. Some of those suicides, and again, I cannot quote confidential details, but one is too many, all right? But we had several that were carried out with firearms that were left unsecured in the home. So that's one thing. The other thing is that during this tenure, with all of this going on and the pandemic, I want to say that we've shown a laser-like focus on the inequities in some of, I don't want to just say our zip codes, but all of these things, mental health, the suicide rate, the digital divide, these aren't new. I'm old. I've been around for a while. So these were already here before, but the pandemic forced us to shine that light so we could say, how come these kids have this, but these kids don't? What's happening over here with our ELL program? What's happening over here with our special needs kids? And again, what's happening with the educators that we are entrusting our children to for several hours a day? If we're not taking care of them, then how are they going to take care of our kids? So those are a couple of things. I could be on the soapbox and you'd be stuck here for a while.